This time on Ask Rad Rat, we're talking about manuals, wheelies, and hockey. Welcome to Rad Rat Video. Here on this channel, 3 times a week, we learn something new about skateboarding. Either we're learning trick histories, we're learning how to do tricks themselves on the shred skull, or we're watching game reviews of classic skateboarding games, or we're answering your questions on this series, Ask Rad Rat. Today I've got 2 questions for you. Well, 3 kind of. The first one is from Hooded Crow, and he asks, what is the origin of the term fakie? This was actually really hard to find. If you look it up, there's no definitive answer by someone who really knows. It's kind of weird. It just seems like it sort of happened, and it's hard to say why. So I found a couple different sources of different ideas. The first one was that it was actually from a dictionary, and it said that it's the fake version that makes it seem more novel or difficult than it really is. So doing something to fakie, like you're faking out doing something hard, it didn't really make a ton of sense to me. I don't think that's really going to be it. The other idea was that you're faking being the opposite stance. So keep in mind, this is long before switch. Your board doesn't have a nose, you're not really popping switch or anything. If you're rolling fakie, it's basically the same as switch. So if you were doing like a fakie rock to regular, you'd be like faking being goofy and doing a rock. And that kind of makes sense. But again, I don't really know. It's kind of a weird one. The last one I found, the last potential thing, seems like the least likely, but also the most interesting option. It was actually from an Australian slang dictionary, and it said that fakie just meant backward. Not in skateboarding or in surfing or whatever, it meant backward. So I guess your dad or grandpa, if you're Australian, would put the car in fakie and back out of the spot, something like that. And I don't know if that's true or not. Let me know if you're Australian. Do you know of anyone using the term fakie not related to skateboarding? Let me know. And it seems like maybe it started there and then it got into surfing and then maybe into skateboarding. I'm just not really sure. Let me know what you think below. It seems most people think that it meant the fake way to do something, although it's usually harder. I don't know. I couldn't really tell you exactly. The second part of his question was, why do we call them manuals instead of wheelies? Now I do actually know the answer to that one. So if you go on the back wheels on anything, on a bike or in your car or whatever, people would always call it a wheelie. So why is it called a manual for skateboarding? Well, it's kind of not. A manual is something a little more specific. So in freestyle circles where people just skate on flat, people will still use the term wheelie. Nose wheelie, hang 10 wheelie, one wheel wheelie, coconut wheelie, which is like a primo slide, but the deck isn't sliding, the wheels are still rolling. They use wheelie all the time. And what a manual technically is, the original trick was called a manual roll. And it was invented by a guy named Pat Ngoho. I've talked about him before, I don't remember in what video, but what he invented was rolling out of a pool, doing a wheelie up on the deck, and then acid dropping back into the pool. And he called that the manual roll. And so what manual came to mean was doing a wheelie on an obstacle. So, you gapped out of the pool, you had a starting point, then you landed back in the pool. And so now a manual means doing a wheelie on like a curb or a manual pad or something, where you start it, you land in it, and then you drop off at the end, as opposed to just pulling it up, doing a couple parking spaces, and then landing. So technically speaking, it is still a wheelie if you just do it on flat, but people just generally don't use that term anymore, unless you're a freestyler. Okay, second one was from Jordan Duh, who asked about the impact of hockey on skateboarding. And I replied and I said, you think hockey has something to do with skateboarding? And they came back and said, no, the brand hockey. And pro tip, I've worked in marketing and branding for a long time. Don't call your brand hockey. It worked back in the day for brands like Girl and Chocolate to just have a one-word name that was a regular word. But nowadays you have to be searchable. Type in hockey in Google and see how many pages you have to go back before you see something about a skateboard brand. Anyway, the question is more about just hockey, which is just kind of a small indie sort of brand. There's a lot more indie type of brands that are similar than that. And so the question is like, what is this doing to skateboarding? What is the effect going to be in the long term? And I think there are a lot of pros and not that many cons, assuming that it's done right. So one thing that is a big benefit of having all these small indie brands is that you get a lot of different options. So we're not just talking about the board designs as far as the shape or exotic materials or things like that. You also get different types of graphics. You get different kind of team members. I think that's a really big deal because there are brands now like Mode Skateboards, for example, that has a freestyle team. And there are a few different freestyle brands, but not that many. But the thing is, now you can actually be a pro freestyler and you can get boards from this brand and they cater to that. So that's one thing. There's also guys like Joe Moore who are just doing really interesting, different stuff. You're not going to see him on Plan B, but he's had various sponsors throughout the years, like White Trash right now. He was on Mentality in the past, and smaller brands that are more willing to work with a guy who's doing something completely unique and interesting. So if it weren't for these small brands, you wouldn't have people in more niche kinds of skateboarding types of skateboarding that would be able to actually do it at a professional level. One of the other interesting benefits to having all these smaller brands is that you can find one with the same kind of values as you. So this can mean a lot of different things. It could be like, it's partially owned by the team. So if you turn pro for this brand, you actually have a stake in the company. Or this brand over here, maybe for every sale, they donate to, Rainforest Foundation so that they can offset the tree, whatever the case may be. It'd be a bunch of different things. You can find a brand that suits you exactly and what you value as well. So I think that that's definitely a good thing. But one of the bad things that I've seen people argue before is that these smaller brands, they're small. They can't really afford to sponsor contests. They're not sending their team on tours out across the world and bringing skateboarding to remote areas and all that kind of stuff. And I can definitely see where this could be an issue. But the thing is, it's not really their responsibility to do that anyway. Their business, it's about making money and maybe some of those other things we talked about. But the one thing that I do think is an issue for smaller brands is supporting their team. So if you think about, if you are on a major deck company, you're on Plan B, you might sell a few thousand boards and you make some money every month. Well, if you're on a tiny little brand and you sell like 4 of your pro model that month, you're not going to live off of that. And the problem is these boards are going to cost more generally because they're not, they don't have the bulk buying power that a bigger brand does. So they're going to cost you more. The skaters are making less, and they can't really support themselves 100% off of deck sales. Even big brands, major pros, can't really afford to live off of their deck sales. So you think about, if you're selling 4 boards a month, you're not just selling your board. Your pro is actually going to pack the board and mail it to the guy too, because that's just how it's got to work out, because the numbers just don't work. So I don't know. I think it's a good thing for all the reasons that I talked about. But if every brand did it, if every single company was tiny and there were just thousands of them instead of a few really big ones, I think that would make the level of pro skating actually go down, because everyone would have to have a second job. So that's my thoughts about that. Both of these questions, by the way, came from either Twitter or Instagram direct messages. That's the best way to reach me if you want to have your question answered next time. So I have links to those in the description. You can check those out. Also, until next time, here's some more videos I did recently. There's a playlist for all the Ask Rad Rats right there if you want to watch them. And also tap my logo above so you can subscribe and learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thanks for watching.